Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and good morning to the folks joining us from the West Coast. Welcome to today's webinar on the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program and H1N1. My name is Barbara Lopez, and I work for the Food and Nutrition Service in the Office of Strategic Initiatives, Partnerships, and Outreach. And on behalf of all my colleagues in the Child Nutrition Division, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's session. We're going to get started in just about a minute. I'm going to quickly go over two features that this webinar environment offers for you to use. The first feature is, if you'll notice on your top session of your webinar, there's a list of menu items, and one of the menu items is a Q&A little icon. If you were to click on that little icon, a little pop-up window will come up, and you'll notice that you'll be able to type in either a question or a comment to us, and we'll receive it on this end. After each agenda item, we will be taking questions over the phone. However, in the event that we can't get to all the questions, or if you'd like to submit your question via the Q&A piece, you can do so by clicking on that little icon. Also, over on the top right of your webinar session, there's a couple icons there as well. There's a little icon with three little pieces of paper, and if you were to click on that little icon, another pop-up window is going to come up, and you'll see that there's three documents there for you to download. Including in those documents is our presentation for today's webinar session. I'd also like to remind everyone that today's webinar is being recorded, and we will make it available at a future date. So as soon as the recorded version of this webinar is available, we'll go ahead and send out an informing email to let everybody know how to access the webinar. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, on behalf of all my colleagues, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's session. It's my pleasure to introduce the Director of the Child Nutrition Division here at USDA Food and Nutrition Service, Cindy Long.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and I also want to add my thanks to Barbara for you all taking time to be on the call today. As you all know, this is kind of a new approach for us. We decided to go ahead and set up periodic conference calls with folks who operate the program in the states in an effort to make sure that we are communicating as effectively as we possibly can with you all, and also to facilitate you all being able to communicate as effectively as you possibly can with operators at the local level. So, you know, we think this is a great approach. What we tried to do was to schedule conference calls for periods in between opportunities that we here at the federal level had to meet with you all at the state level in person. So kind of to intersperse them between the meetings that we often see you at, things like the annual national conference that SNA holds. This year we have the biennial state agency conference and other opportunities. We do have a tentative schedule for several more conference calls throughout the year, and we will get that out to you all as soon as possible so you can get them on your calendars. I believe our next conference call for school-related staff is scheduled, tentatively at least scheduled for January 28th. And but as I said, we will follow up and put out a tentative schedule on the partner web so you can put things on your calendars. I also want to say this initiative, these ongoing conference calls / webinars, are something that our Deputy Undersecretary, Janie Thornton, is very excited about. Unfortunately, she's not able to participate in today's call, but she is looking forward to participating on some calls in the future. And finally, before I turn it over to, I think, back to Barbara to start on the substance, I did want to say that while we have some subject matter topics scoped out for upcoming conference calls, we are certainly open to your input. So if you have thoughts on subjects that would be valuable to focus on in these calls, please share them with your regional office. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Barbara and again say thank you very much for participating.
Great. Thank you, Cindy. Okay, for today's webinar agenda, we have three items, two on the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program and one on H1N1. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the first agenda item, which is on the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program information and current issues. I'd like to introduce Bill Wagner, Section Head for the Child Nutrition Division.
Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you for being on here. I first want to go ahead and mention we do have quite a few people logged on here with a lot of different information and varying coming in at different points. So some of you know everything about the fresh fruit and vegetable, and some of you know almost nothing according to the comments we got. So some of this, as you'll see, the folks that just bear with me, we've only got a few slides here, but some of it's going to be review for you, and then we'll get into a few slides on what we want to highlight for the folks that are already in the process here. But from a historical perspective, the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program originally came up in the Farm Security and Rural Investment Act of 2002, and it was just a pilot that had 4 states and 1 Indian tribal organization, with the purpose being to determine the best practices for increasing fruits and vegetable consumption in the schools. The Reauthorization Act of 2004 was the next major milestone that added another 4 states and 3 more Indian tribal organizations. After that, we had 6 more states that were appropriated money in 2006. That was just for a one-time situation. And then in the 2008, as you see on your slide, the Consolidated Appropriations Act and the Food Conservation and Energy Act, commonly referred to as the Farm Bill, we moved great leaps forward. It went nationwide to everybody that wasn't already participating, and authorized specific funds and gave us new Section 19 in the National School Lunch Act, which is what we're operating out of now. So those new requirements began July 1, 2008. Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program does offer free fresh fruits and vegetables to all elementary schools, not to all elementary schools, to elementary schools, those selected elementary schools in the 50 states, District of Columbia, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. The purpose, however, is to target schools with a high percentage of children certified for free and reduced price. So that's a key point there. There is an annual application process for the schools to go through, and of course the states to review. The fresh fruits and vegetables need to be available during the school day, but outside of the lunch and breakfast period. The funding of the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program last year, July 1, 2008, was $40 million, and there was some additional money there that was appropriated, and this is for school year. So this is for school year, $40 million. July 1, 2009 is $65 million, plus we had an additional $7.5 million of recovered funds. So we'll see how that goes, but it'll be recovered funds from previous Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program money that is left over from the previous year will be incorporated in. It jumps up again in July 1, 2010 to 101, 2011 to 150, and then it will be adjusted annually by the Consumer Price Index. So as you can see, there's a lot of increase here, up to 150 million. Of course, we don't know if there will be any changes when reauthorization comes to that funding, but that is where we sit right now. And a lot more schools are going to come on board from where we are now up to the 150 million plus. So as I just said, we had approximately 72.5 million available this year that was put out. States were notified in March of the school year of those 2009-10 allocations. We expect that process to continue. Each year, the states will have the opportunity then to request what level of funding they have in for that July allocation. Congress made $16 million available for this July, and essentially they've just cut the available that they knew was the $65 million that they were appropriating into quarters. And quite honestly, we could probably expect that to continue. The same amount we would expect in the end would be available, but what's available to us in July would be cut in a quarter. And based on this year's experience, I don't think that we'll have a particular problem with the allocation, since the majority of schools are not actually operating as of July 1, so they will not take that full amount. Let's talk a minute about the school selection criteria. The Farm Bill contains provisions to facilitate, that specifically set forward the school selection criteria. It does only allow elementary schools. must be operating the National School Lunch Program. Highest priority is given to those elementary schools with the highest percentage of low-income students. So that is the high percentage of free and reduced price kids. We have on here as a note, remaining schools must have 50% or greater of students eligible for free and reduced price meals. So that's their lower limit in the regs, and there are some exemptions to that. Each state total enrollment of all schools selected must result in a per-student allocation of $50 to $75 per year. So the state knows the amount that they're getting, and the state knows the $50 to $75. It doesn't have to be the same for each school, but certainly makes it a lot easier. The outreach requirement. Let's move through here. Congress was very clear in the requirement that this process, how they wanted this process to be conducted. They had very specific directions in there. Again, their priorities for participation goes to those neediest schools, the highest free and reduced price schools. Outreach is a little bit separate process. So they required, or they asked for, sending a generic, somewhat generic notice that went out to all schools at 50% or higher, free and reduced price. State agencies expect to make a concerted effort to bring those high free and reduced price schools into the fresh fruit and vegetable program. But on top of that, they must target those neediest schools. We've suggested that state agencies rank their schools, starting with the highest free and reduced price, down to the 50% level, since all of those could be eligible, and begin at the top to determine, based on their allocation, how many of those schools they would be able to service, and work down in that way. However, if a state agency has a greater number of schools in the high need range, and we do know several states are in that situation, a lot of states are in that situation, and they know that their funds are only going to reach 85%, for instance, range, then they can go ahead and just solicit the applications from those schools and notify those schools, because they already know that they will be more than enough, would expect to have more than enough applications from those schools, and those lower free and reduced price they wouldn't expect to ever be able to give the money to. They would not then therefore have to notify them. And that outreach should be conducted before the schools are selected. And really, I guess one of the things we're trying to talk about here is the upfront technical assistance. Before the application process begins, they should provide some upfront technical assistance. If they see that they're not getting the applications that they would expect, maybe there's some follow-up that needs to happen with those particular schools or school districts to determine why that's the situation, why those applications aren't coming in. So, fresh fruit application information, the things that you're going to have on there is the number of enrolled students for the percent free and reduced price eligible, again, that being your primary concern. The certificate needs to be signed to support by the school food manager, the principal, and the district superintendent. They need to have an implementation plan, how they're going to integrate the fresh fruit and vegetable program with other efforts in their school to promote the sound nutrition, and encourage development of partnerships. We've always encouraged those state agencies and schools to work closely with program partners at the state and local levels to facilitate successful implementation in the operation of the fresh fruit and vegetable program. When available, schools should include in the application a description of the partnership activities undertaken or planned when available. National, state, and local partners have proven to be an important resource for the fresh fruit and vegetable program since it began as that pilot program. In addition to local partnerships developed by the local participating schools, FNS national partners include the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, National Cancer Institute, United Produce Association, and Produce for Better Health. They all continue to support the goals of the fresh fruit and vegetable program and work closely with many fresh fruit and vegetable participant schools. All that said, there are some areas of concern that we have. As I've tried to highlight as we've gone through here, the fact that we're appropriately targeting and conducting that outreach. need to think about whether we're doing enough of that upfront work. Even if you are getting enough applications, are you getting those applications from the schools that this program was intended to target first, those highest free and reduced price again? Also have some concerns with the paneling of the applications, some of the stories that we've heard. Panel reviews of applications have found that some of their high-need schools did not provide what they considered to be the best or even a completely adequate application that was submitted by those high-need schools. State agencies shouldn't be excluding those schools from the process completely. In those instances, we're asking that state agencies conduct that additional outreach and provide technical assistance to those schools to discuss the program and address the overall benefits for their students. What we're saying here is one of the other things that we've heard, I guess, is that geographic dispersion has been done. States have chosen to or wanted to choose districts or schools from across their state. That's clearly not the intention here. The intention is to go to the highest free and reduced price schools. Also, the states should not be excluding poorly written applications just on that fact. If they're high free and reduced price, this is where we're asking that you go out and do that additional work, additional outreach to make sure you have a complete application, or there's a reason that you don't. This is not, I guess the emphasis here, this is not a competitive grant process. So and all that said, we're not trying to say that particular schools cannot be excluded. Certainly, if they submit their applications late, past the date that you've set for, those can be excluded and should be. If they are, if there are CRE concerns, evidence that they're not running the fresh fruit or wouldn't be able to run the fresh fruit and vegetable program properly because they're not running another program properly, or have monetary issues, that's certainly a reason to discount that application, and you would have reasons to do that. We've gotten a lot of questions about the application process, who's going in and who's going out, and where that emphasis should be, and I just wanted to make all those issues apparent to everyone. FNS resources. We do have a fair amount of resources available at this point on our web, on our public web, and on our partner web. We have the policy memos, we have the Q&As that are out, and we have the guidance manual. And we are currently drafting the regulation. We'll see how the time frame works on that, but we're currently drafting that. That is a top priority in our section, and we hope to get it started in the clearance process in the next couple of months. So that will, of course, give us a lot more to work with, but we don't expect at this point there to be significant changes from the guidance that we've already put out there. In addition, if the states have questions, they obviously should be going to their regional offices, and regional offices don't have those answers. They certainly should be coming to us. And on top of that, we're working on another resource now, which is the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Toolkit with our SIPO. And at this point, we can go ahead and take some questions, and then we'll move on to the toolkit.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and ask the operator to please open up the telephone lines. And as a quick reminder, you can also submit your question using on the menu item. There is a Q&A little menu item there, and if you click on that, you'll be able to submit a question. You can write it in. But I'll go ahead and ask the operator to please take the first call.
Thank you. At this time, if you'd like to ask a question, you can do so by pressing *1 on your phone. You will be prompted to record your name, which we use to introduce your question. Once again, that's *1 on your phone. One moment, please.
Okay, and while we're waiting for that first one to come in, I'll take one here that was written in. Can the state agency limit the fresh fruit and vegetable program to one school per district? No. That is, the answer to that is no, we cannot do that. It is per the lowest or the highest free and reduced price. neediest schools. So if they happen to be more than one in the district or multiple in the district, then we would be doing that. And the second one I have here is that we have too many schools in our state above 50%. And certainly not all schools are going to be able to participate in this program. And again, you don't have to do outreach to everybody at 50% and above if you know or can reasonably guesstimate where that level is set, that that you're going to be able to provide fresh fruit and vegetable funds to those folks.
Okay, operator, we'll take the first call if there's one.
At this time, we have no questions in queue.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and take one more that came in through the Q&A.
I'll let Barbara answer that.
The question is, what is OSIPO? OSIPO stands for the Office of Strategic Initiatives, Partnerships, and Outreach, and it's a division here in the Food and Nutrition Service. And we work closely with the Child Nutrition Division on various projects. In particular, we're going to be working closely with them to design the new toolkit, which we'll be discussing as the next agenda item. Okay, operator, is there another, or by chance a phone?
Our first question comes from Rita Russell.
Hello.
Hi, Rita.
Hello?
Hi there, welcome.
Hi, well, thank you. In Delaware, one of the problems that we're facing is that although we have schools and administrators that support the program, the number of times that they are allowing the fresh fruit and vegetable to be offered doesn't allow the school to be able to spend the total amount of money that they've been allocated. And even though we've reduced it to the lowest amount, $50 per student, we still have some school food authorities that just can't spend all of the money. And, they're discouraged about having to return the money. Can the state agency reallocate to other schools?
Yes, the state agency does have the ability to reallocate money to other schools, and I guess the other thing I would say there is certainly I would work with them. If the reason is they're not able to do it, multiple times a week, and that's the reason they're not spending the money, conceivably work with that SFA to find out if something can be done to improve that, because certainly one of the purposes behind this is the repetitiveness of the fruit and vegetable availability to the students. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Operator, is there another question over the phone?
Yes, there is. Our next question comes from Roxanne Greenlee.
Hi. I just wanted some clarification. I think I misheard you. Did you say that we could award different amounts based on different criteria, or I thought we had to award the same amount across the board?
Well, I think most states are awarding the same amount across the board for ease, but if you have a criteria on the size of the school, for instance, so that it might be slightly more expensive for them to obtain the fruits and vegetables, or they're further away or something, so their costs are going to be higher, and you want to give that school $70 and the other school $65, that's at state's discretion, as long as you're within that 50 to 75 range and you have a rationale.
Okay, thank you. Just so you're aware, we were told the exact opposite thing from our regional office. So.
Okay. What state are you in?
I'm from Wyoming.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Operator, is there another question?
Yes, our next question comes from, I believe it is Jen Hawk.
Hi, Jen.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, you said we cannot limit it to one school per district. So there's no limitation at all that we can put on per district, because in essence, I'm from New Jersey, and we have 650 school districts, and we have some districts that have 80-some schools. So in essence, really, our whole fresh fruit and vegetable program could be one district then, if they really wanted to do that.
If they were the highest free and reduced price schools in your state, then in essence it could be.
Wow.
I would certainly expect in certain areas of the country you have certain states, you have certain areas that are much more needy than others, and there's certainly the preponderance of fresh fruit and vegetable schools would be in those needy areas. And theoretically it could be all in one area.
My concern is that one of our largest districts is all very high needy, and if they really chose to, they could take all the money for that one district, and then you have all your other 50% or more schools that wouldn't have access to it. I mean, that just doesn't seem fair to me. But
well, I understand where you're coming from, but Congress was pretty clear in how they wanted that money to be dispersed, and they wanted it to be sent to the highest free and reduced price schools.
Okay.
That was Congress's criteria.
Okay, thank you.
And I have another one here, and I think we'll have to move on then. It says, so if a state has a discretionary grant process that looks at the geographics, we need to disregard this and provide the funds to the highest free and reduced price. And the answer to that is yes. Again, and we shouldn't be separating it out based on where they are in the state.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next agenda item. If you're currently in the phone queue waiting to ask a question, I do encourage you to use the Q&A feature of the webinar. You can click on that little Q&A and submit your question to us in written format to make sure that we receive it. We don't want to lose your question, but we're going to go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, which is the toolkit. Okay, we are currently in the very early stages in the design phase of creating a brand new fresh fruit and vegetable program toolkit. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the vision that we have for this toolkit, as well as the different components that we hope to develop for the toolkit. We would like to create a toolkit that's very practical. That's the intent of us creating the fresh fruit and vegetable program toolkit. And in particular, we would like to create materials that you could use for the program. So you'll notice on my slide, one of the first goals, or the second bullet, one of the goals is to provide materials, quote, out of the box. For us, we're essentially looking to produce materials that you would be able to go to and download and essentially customize these materials to help meet your needs for the program. That's essentially what we're visioning for the toolkit to be. We'd also like to include as part of the toolkit success stories. We know that many schools have had many barriers and have overcome those barriers, and so we'd like to find a way to highlight those successes within the toolkit. We're also going to be looking at two of our partners, the United Fresh Produce Association and FRAC, and we're going to look to them for some help in the development of the content of the toolkit. We're going to use some of their ideas and their expertise about the program and in the field to help us design some of the materials that we would like to include in the kit. Some timelines in terms of our expectations for producing the toolkit. We essentially see creating the toolkit in two phases, with phase one just very recently starting and going through December. And during these next couple months, we're going to be working on a framework for the kit. And our vision is to really see this kit being comprised of four main components. We'd also like to look to you, starting with today's webinar, for some feedback in terms of what you would like to see in the toolkit. What types of materials would you like? What would be useful for you? And then we'll launch into phase two. Once we have that framework in place, we'll then dedicate a substantial amount of time populating the toolkit with materials for you to use. I think it's really important for me to point out that this toolkit will be web-based, and it'll live here on the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program homepage, and you can access this page from the USDA Food and Nutrition Services public website, and I went ahead and included the homepage link there at the bottom. I also included a screenshot and the link to the School Breakfast Program. The School Breakfast Program created a web-based toolkit. And in the event that maybe you're having some difficulty imagining what a web-based toolkit may look like, how it would navigate, or how you would access some of the materials, I would recommend that you go to this link and check out their web-based toolkit. In particular, if you go to their marketing link, they have a section there with marketing resources, and in this area it contains a lot of customizable, quote, out-of-the-box type of materials that you can use for the school breakfast program. And this is essentially very similar in terms of the types of materials that we would like to develop for the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Toolkit. Okay, so I'm now going to talk a little bit more about the vision that we have in terms of the 4 components that will build the framework for the toolkit, starting with the first one, which is a program fact sheet. Now, I just mentioned that this toolkit will be web-based, and so really think about this program fact sheet as a program web page. And then the second component, which are the templates and the materials, these are what I've been referring to as these customizable, quote, out-of-the-box type of materials that you can download and edit to help meet your needs. We're also going to look at producing webcasts. Now, webcasts are somewhat of a new media for the Food and Nutrition Service, so it's an exciting opportunity for us to include webcasts in our kit. And then the success stories, which, again, we'd like to create an area where we'd be able to share the many successes that exist with the program across the country. I'm going to go into detail in regards to each of those 4 sections. So starting with the first one, the program fact sheet. Again, this is going to be a web-based page, and it will include all the important information about the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program, but also hyperlink to additional resources like the policy memos or the handbook or websites like Food Safety and Team Nutrition. But from this area, you'll also be able to access the other 3 components that we're going to create for the toolkit. So from one location, you'll be able to access many resources. And then the second component, which are the templates and the materials, and I briefly talked about this. These are the customizable, quote, out-of-the-box type of materials that I've mentioned. And it's probably best to give you an example. So we could have a PowerPoint presentation that would include pre-populated slides with information on the benefits of the program and then maybe some slides on the application process. You would then be able to download that presentation and edit it and include your state-specific information like your application deadlines or a checklist or your contact information, anything that you think that you need to make this PowerPoint presentation complete. And so essentially with the toolkit, what we're trying to create here is a materials section where you'd be able to go to, you'd find resources that you'd be able to download and edit with the bulk of the information already pre-populated to help you meet your various needs with the program. And then the third component, the webcasts. Webcasts are these short, pre-recorded audio and visual segments, and these segments could include a variety of different media. So for example, we could have a webcast that has a little bit of video and then a PowerPoint presentation and maybe some snapshots and some document, and then they would include audio throughout the little segment. So really what we're trying to create here are very topic-specific or theme-specific webcasts that would be relatively small, about 5 minutes in length, and we would produce them to be in a small file size so you'd be able to access them easily over the Internet. And then here I included on this slide some ideas for the types of webcasts that we may be able to produce. So for example, we could have a series of webcasts on some common barriers and how to overcome them, or a webcast on the application process, or a webcast on just general information. So if we have an interesting topic, we could certainly produce a webcast for it. And the intent really with checking out webcasts for the kit is to see how we can take information, instead of providing it in a written format, and bringing it a little bit more to life by using this new media, using some audio and visual technology to be able to produce these little segments and then being able to push them out over the Internet. And then the last, fourth component, the success stories, and this is essentially 2 parts. We would like to host a webinar where we would invite 3 or 4 schools to be presenters on the webinar, and we would invite additional schools and additional states to listen in, much like we're having right now. they would share with us their success stories, share with us some of their materials. We could learn about some of the barriers that they have overcome and have question and answers, and we'd be able to record that webinar and include it in the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program Toolkit as a reference. And then for the rest of the success stories that exist out there, we would like to capture those stories and also include them in the toolkit, either as an online brochure or possibly as a print brochure. Also in my division, we have a very small but mighty technical camera team, so we would look at turning some of these success stories into little videos that we could also push out over the internet. Here's my contact information. If you have a success story that you would like to share and include in our toolkit, I would love to hear from you. You can send me an email. You don't need to describe your success story yet, but you could let me know that you are interested, and then I would be happy to get in contact with you in regards to some of the next steps for the toolkit. Okay, well that pretty much wraps up the framework in terms of what we envision the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program toolkit to be. I'm going to go ahead and ask the operator to open up the telephone lines, and we'll take any questions that you may have. In particular, we're very interested in hearing from you. What types of materials would you like to see created? What would you like to see in a Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program toolkit?
Thank you. Once again, if you'd like to ask a question, it is *1 on your phone. *1 on your phone. One moment. Our first question comes from Carrie Ziegler.
Great. Thank you. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, I'm calling from Arizona. We've had the program for a few years in the tribal setting, now like everybody else. One thing I would like to see developed is some kind of brochure that schools that are participating would be able to hand out to parents. A lot of our schools do kickoff events, and they're always asking for some kind of handout material or something to promote their program and show the parents and community members that the schools are participating.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Great idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Operator, is there a second comment or question or idea?
At this time, we have no further calls in queue.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to take the next couple minutes and go back to our previous agenda item and take some questions from there. I think there was a couple questions in the queue, or I know I asked folks to submit it over the Q&A, so since there's no more questions for the toolkit, we're going to just quickly take this opportunity to answer some of the questions in regards to the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program.
It looks like the other one we have online is how, regarding fresh fruit and vegetable, is how indirect costs, are indirect costs allowed, not how. Are indirect costs allowed? Yes. Indirect costs would be allowed. And I think the only other one I have here is how should the state proceed when the LEA administrators won't support the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program if they're high free and reduced price schools? Well, and the only, I think, reasonable answer we would have there is obviously if they're not supportive of the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program and you're not getting the school, we're not getting their agreement to run the program, then that would be a problem. But I think we would need to work with them to try to get them to understand, as we said during the overview there, to understand the positive benefits of the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program, the purpose of the program, and so they would understand that and hopefully would be able to set up the program. And you can also contact some partners that are used elsewhere in your state, and conceivably they could help you with that convincing or making sure that those LEA administrators did understand the positive aspects of the program.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read one of the Q&A questions that came in from Joni Hildenbrand. And the question reads, we are totally electronic. Incorporated in our system is an electronic signature of an authorized representative. So under the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program, are we now going to have to require paper to come into our office to get the 3 required signatures?
No, if you're totally electronic and you have a system that accepts electronic signatures, then those would be the signatures that if you accept those that way, then I would say that would be fine.
Okay. The next question came in from Linda Coate, and the question reads, is the current funding allocation going to follow the same pattern with different pots of money, or will it be rolled into one for smoother management?
I think, as I said, at this point, the funding is on school year. I can't really tell you what the future may bring, but on a school year basis, and because the government operates on a fiscal year, and this does not operate like school lunch and school breakfast where you get the reimbursement set up, and that way we will be getting money in July, and then you'll be getting additional money in October. So there will be those two situations, and that, at least for the foreseeable future, is how we're going to operate.
Okay, we're going to quickly check with the operator to see if there's a question over the phone.
Yes, we have a question from Becky Lee.
My question is, what really is the purpose of an application if we're going strictly with free and reduced?
Well, I understand the purpose is somewhat diminished, but it is to get those signatures and to make sure that those people are buying in and understand how the program is going to work and what they're supposed to do with that. And then it also gives you the availability to turn them down if for some reason, during a CR review they were not performing adequately, or for some reason you do not think they can run the program.
Operator, is there another question?
Yes, we have another question. I do not have a name for it, though.
Hi there. Hello?
Hello?
Okay.
It could be me, Janelle Peterson from South Dakota.
Hi there.
Talking about the toolkit, what would be really helpful is if we had some handouts to give to the teachers along with the fresh fruit and vegetable snack of the day, that the teachers could use that for a teachable moment right there. In the fresh fruit and vegetable handout we have, or the handbook, we have a number of different resources that they can go and take the time to look and explore that themselves, but they're not doing that. So if the toolkit could have some of the basic fruits and vegetables with where they come from, the nutritional stats, all that sort of thing, and it could just be taken into the classroom with the fresh fruit and vegetable, there might be some nutrition education that actually happens.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that suggestion. We're all nodding our heads in agreement with you. Thank you.
I would make one other comment about the brochures. I'm not sure that those would be, I'm not sure that they'd be read. We've tried to do a brochure before for the teachers, and I think we have to use the teachable moments to teach the children, and the parents kind of come second, which is where the brochure is going to go at, and I'm not sure that's the best use of of the money for that toolkit. Thanks.
Okay, so maybe a little less emphasis on the brochure. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and take another question that came in through the Q&A. The question came in from David Schwar. And the question reads, our experience has been that the first quarter allocation has been too high. Because of the mid-August school start, we are unable to utilize all funds. How can we address this?
Again, as I said during the discussion, the July allocation, we will send it out, and when do we send that out? Typically in April, I think it was, that we send out a notice to the state asking them how much they want for that first quarter. So we'll tell them your total amount is $1 million, and you get to choose how much of that. If it's over a quarter of it, you would have to tell us why you wanted more than a quarter. But if it's less than a quarter and you're still able to fund your schools and start them on time, then that's perfectly fine. We do not want you to tell the schools to start late, but if you're able to fund your schools and start them on time, certainly if they're only open for 1 out of the 3 months there, then you would not want a 1 quarter of your money to be allocated during that first quarter, and you can simply request less money at that time. Now, we just did that first time this last time, but we do plan on continuing to do that same process next year and here on out, as long as we're doing this July and October allocation.
Okay, we got a comment in from the Q&A regarding the toolkit from Nicole Vance, and it reads, "It would be nice for the toolkit to have a PowerPoint that we could fill in with state-specific information that could be used for the required annual training." And that is an excellent suggestion. So thank you, Nicole, for that piece. Operator, is there another question on the phone?
Yes, we have a couple questions. The first comes from Becky Bissett.
Hi, Becky.
Hi. I have a question regarding the funding, the district funding for the Fresh Fruits and Vegetable Program. The first allocation they get, which is for theoretically, July, August, September, can they front load their administrative costs to use more of that funding? For example, they have to buy some carts or some type of larger equipment, to facilitate their program. Is that acceptable?
Yes, that is acceptable. They can't go over their total. They have to understand what their total administrative cost is going to be for that amount for that school year.
So their administrative cost is based on that entire year's worth of funding, not just that first quarter?
Correct.
Great, thanks.
Operator, next question, please.
Our next question comes from Tricia Churchill.
Hi, Tricia.
Hello. We just wanted some clarification here in the Northeast, and that is we hear very loudly and very specifically the intent of Fresh Fruit and Vegetable is to target high need, 50% and over. But if you have a state in a situation where they have exhausted all of their, in our smaller states, where they have exhausted all of their free and reduced price schools with 50% or over, I wanted to confirm that it's allowable for them to start targeting 49%, 48%, and declining.
The short answer is yes, it is, and I think we had to do that. There are exemptions in there in the regulations. The intent of this, of course, is to do the highest free and reduced price. And I think most states are in a situation where they don't go there, but there are, I understand, a couple. Of course, that being said, if for some reason they're missing a school that's a higher free and reduced price, really in that situation we really would expect them to go out there and talk to that school and find out why they're not doing that outreach or why that school's not applying, push that school a little higher. But if it's not, then yes, there are exemptions. If you are in that situation, if all the other schools are done, then you can keep working down.
Thank you very much.
Operator, is there another question?
Yes, our next question comes from Leonard. Sir, your line is now open.
Yes, is there a template that can be used for a Fresh Fruit and Vegetable review?
I don't believe we have. You mean like for a review when the state's going out?
Yes, sir.
I will look into that. I don't know that we have created one for that. There are some. Yeah, we certainly can.
Thank you.
Operator, is there another phone question?
That concludes the questions in queue at this time.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next agenda item. Our next agenda item is on H1N1. I'd like to introduce Julie Brewer, Section Head in the Child Nutrition Division.
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to hit some of the highlights of a presentation that was already conducted on a webinar back on August 25th, and then open it up again for questions. I think this has been a really valuable discussion. Just to give some background for people who may not have initially participated in our webinar on H1N1, after the initial outbreaks last spring, we were tasked with putting together a plan on how to respond to the H1N1 resurgence that we were expecting this flu season, with particular concern on serving meals to children who rely on free and reduced price meals who wouldn't have access to those if a school were dismissed. What we have put together is a waiver opportunity or option for state agencies to allow institutions to provide meals to children in non-congregate settings when schools are dismissed as a result of an H1N1 outbreak. As I mentioned, I'm using the slides from a previous webinar. I'm just going to hit some of the highlights. The information is available on these slides, and the webinar is also available for your review on our website if you want more detailed information about some of these items. And then again, open it up for questions so we have time to discuss your specific concerns or questions. We issued some policy guidance and information about this, about the response for school closings and dismissals resulting from H1N1 outbreaks. And again, those are available on our website. I encourage you to take a look. We did have an initial set of Q&As that we recently revised to update with some additional questions that came through since the webinar. So I encourage you to take a look at those. Our plan for response to serving meals to children when schools are dismissed is based on the authority in the Summer Food Service Program that allows programs to serve meals during unanticipated school closures. However, the programs are designed as congregate meal programs, and so we have limited this waiver of that congregate requirement to only those situations when an entire school is closed or dismissed because of the need for social distancing in an H1N1 outbreak. We've tied it to the public health emergency declaration that has already been declared by the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and so we have the necessary declaration in place. And when a school, and we've already heard of some instances around the country where schools, primarily because of the absence of a significant number of students or even staff, have decided to go ahead and dismiss the school for a short period of time. And in those situations, they are able to activate, if you will, this waiver authority. Another kind of highlighted point that we'd just like to reiterate is that this waiver authority is intended to meet the needs of those low-income children who may not have access to meals if the school meal programs are not operating. But we don't intend to exclude other children, and I think that's been an area of question as we've gone through this process, so we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Again, the eligible entities that can participate in this are basically an organization that has an agreement in place to operate the Summer Food Service Program or the Seamless Summer Option in the NSLP. And that includes school food authorities or other community-based organizations. The key point here is that we expect there to be one plan per school. We do not want to see instances of duplicate coverage for the school. So that is going to require community coordination and pre-planning, which is why we disseminated this information in July so that folks in the community would have time to develop their plans and prevent duplication of services. The general requirements, again, are outlined in our policy information on our website. The meals can be served to low-income children who are under the age of 18 and have a family member in a dismissed
school, a household member enrolled in a dismissed school. This means that if a child is enrolled in a dismissed school and has maybe a younger sibling or an older sibling that is not enrolled in that school, that household may still be served, and that's based on the general model of the summer food service program. There's a maximum of 2 meals per child per day, and the reimbursement rate for the meals that are served are based on the summer food service rate, which do not have free, reduced, and paid categories. They are a set rate based on whether it's a vended urban organization or a self-prep rural organization. So there are differing rates, but it's not based on free or reduced price eligibility. And in the seamless summer option of the National School Lunch, they're all reimbursed at the free rate. So that's another issue of clarification that has come up repeatedly. Which rate do they get reimbursed at? And it just depends on which program you choose to, or you develop your plan around, whether it's the seamless option or the summer food service program. But all meals are reimbursed at the same rate. Another question that has come up in this general requirement area is why not any school, or if we have multiple schools closed, why can't we send them to one school in the community? And again, this goes back to the plan. We wanted communities to develop their own plan for dealing with the outbreaks in advance. And if, for example, you have a site in the community where people can pick up meals, or if they'll be delivering meals, that, it's fine to have one location. The key is, having a way to identify that the household has a child enrolled in the closed school. So we need to think about that and plan in advance. And we expect schools to use the information that they have available on their enrollment and on the free and reduced priced eligibility of folks, of students in their school, and not create new information or try to come up with new information. We want them to use what's on hand. So keep that in mind as you're helping districts and communities develop their plans. Another issue related to the summer food service program and the model of the summer food service program is site eligibility. Generally, schools with 50% or more free and reduced price participation or certification are eligible to participate in the summer food service program, and absolutely in this as well. But we wanted to make the program available to schools that may be dismissed that don't meet that 50% threshold, and we still want to be able to serve the low-income students in that school. So again, it's up to the community to, when they're developing their plan, to figure out how they are going to target the meal service to the low-income children in their school, particularly if they have fewer than 50% certified at free and reduced price. But our intent is not to exclude other children that may be in that school. So that's just a key area of clarification that we wanted to address today. Sponsor requirements. Again, the key requirement is that there has to be a plan in place, and there has to be an agreement with the state agency and communication with the state agency that should our school be dismissed, we are going to trigger this plan or initiate this plan and start these meal services. So the basic requirements are that they have an agreement to operate either the summer food service or the seamless summer option. And, this is easiest for folks that have been operating it over time, and you just extend their existing agreement or tack it on to an existing agreement. But that doesn't exclude folks that may be new to this. It may require a little more work in the planning stages to make sure they are capable of operating the program and understand the requirements. But it doesn't exclude non-previously participating organizations. And then the waiver request, we have a prototype up online that it includes some basic information that helps the state agency understand that this organization has a plan for how this will work
and how the intended target of reaching the low-income children will be met, and making sure that the meal service is conducted in a safe manner and meeting the basic requirements of the program, including meal pattern and so forth. So it really is just kind of thinking ahead and planning ahead for how we might meet the needs of this particular population in our community. Just another point of clarification, we are waiving the operational limitation of congregate meals. We're easing the issues, the requirements around meal times and demonstrating eligibility, and again, ensuring that the schools or the communities develop in their plan how they will target the low-income children, but not at the exclusion of other children. Just want to once again encourage you all to work closely with the schools and communities to help them develop these plans. If you have questions, communicate with your regional office, and we'll do our best to answer those. We can't possibly think of every scenario, and we can't possibly set out national policy for every possible scenario, but please communicate with us, and we'll try to deal with some of those unique scenarios that might come up. A question, around the sponsor requirements or the application requirements that has come up is just recently is about the budget requirements for the program. And I think two thoughts on this. For school institutions that are already participating in an SLP, the states have the ability to waive that budget requirement in their application process. But for the other institutions, you can look at the plan that they have in place. What we want to do is make sure that they understand the amount of reimbursement that they're going to be receiving, and they understand, or they have thought through, that they will have, based on that amount of money, the capability to operate the program. So I think the budget remains an important tool for determining whether or not the plan is feasible. It doesn't have to be a complicated budget, but it does at least say that they understand how much they expect to receive, and they have a plan in place to make sure they can operate the program properly. Again, we have resources available online. I encourage you to take a look at those, and if you need additional information, certainly talk to your regional office. As I mentioned, our priority today is to open it up for questions, try to give you as much technical assistance as we can. Some common questions that we either have issued in the revised version of the Q&As or have heard throughout the past few weeks are listed here, and I'll go through them rather quickly. The first question is, when should the waiver be requested? And I think, again, the reason we put this policy, this information out early in the year, in July, it was to just make sure people had time to start planning ahead. I don't know that any date is too soon to start preparing this plan, and we're hoping that you're already working with communities in your state to do this. Another question that we has come up is, how do we target low-income children? And again, that's one of those things that we can't possibly come up with all the different ways or set a predetermined number of ways that you can do this. This really is a local decision. It really is something that the school and the community organization will need to communicate and plan for how they will do this. We don't want to overtly identify free and reduced price children, and we don't want to exclude, specifically, we don't want to exclude non-eligible children. So whatever the community can do to reach out to those families, we want to encourage that, but we're not going to prescribe that. Another point I want to make on that issue is, again, we don't expect schools to go out and create free and reduced price information. We expect them to use the information that they have available to them. Another question is, can absent children be served? And this is really, based on the idea that schools are telling parents to keep their children home
but the school is still open and students are still coming to school every day. This waiver is not intended to serve those children. We do not want to create home meal delivery programs for absent children. This is only intended to serve a school when the entire school is dismissed because of the outbreak. The next question is that we've heard commonly is, will there be a separate reporting requirement? You will establish the ways that the schools will report to you on their meal counts and participation information for any H1N1 meal services. And then what we would like you all to do in your in the summer food services, the form is the 418, and in the school programs, the FNS 10. What we would expect you to do is include those H1N1 meals in your aggregate numbers for that month. But if you could, in the remarks section of those forms, identify the number of meals that were specific to H1N1, that will help us with any reporting requirements we may have down the road. Another common question is, will there be additional funding? And the short answer is no. This is within the authority of the existing program. We do not have additional funding to help communities respond. This is just an option within the existing funding rates that we have. And then the final question that I just wanted to cover real quickly is, can you issue advances? And the answer, again, the short answer to that is yes. If you have an organization that is going to trigger or start their meal service and they have requested an advance, you can issue that along your regular procedures for issuing an advance. All right, we're going to start taking questions.
We're going to ask the operator to please open up the telephone lines to accept questions. And while we're waiting for the first telephone question, we're going to take one that came in through the Q&A.
So the question I have in front of me is, do you have recommendations on how a non-school sponsor can verify that an adult picking up meals has an enrolled child in the closed school? This, again, is really going to be up to the community plan that they put together. This non-school sponsor will be working very closely, I hope, with the school district and can maybe obtain a roster of enrolled children. And so if I were to drive up, I could just say, my son Jacob is enrolled in this school, and I have three other children at home. Can I have 4 meals, please? And you could look on the roster and say, yep, Jacob's on there. Here's your 4 meals. Have a nice day. Or however, that's just one scenario. That's not the only scenario. But we encourage schools to work closely with the community-based organization that they'll be working with to respond to this, and as much as you can, make that process work for both of the entities.
Okay, operator, is there a question in the queue, please?
Yes, the first question is from Phyllis Hodges.
Hi, Phyllis.
Hey, my question is, I'm not completely clear on the part that if a school is below 50% free and reduced. I've had some systems call in and say, well, my school over in this area is 50% free and reduced, but what about over in this other area of the county where they are not?
Our emphasis on schools that are not 50% free and reduced is that they have a specific plan in their plan for targeting the meal service to the eligible children in their school. But
and could that target include information to the parents, et cetera? Is that the kind of thing we're looking for?
Yes, and again, it depends on the school district. We want to be careful not to overtly identify the free and reduced price eligible kids, and we also do not want to exclude the other enrolled children that may be served in this program. So it's a very fine line, but what we need the community to do is include that specifically in their plan if they're proposing to serve a non-free and reduced price school.
Okay, thank you.
50%, sorry.
The next question comes from Patricia Churchill.
Hi, Patricia.
Hello. I wanted to get a little bit more clarification when you were discussing waivers And the latest Q&A does talk about how the waiver is absolutely in regard to the congregate setting, and waivers are allowed with any pre-operational training and monitoring requirements. Other than that, it seems that they'll be done on a case-by-case basis. Now, I heard a little bit about what you said about budgets, but I wasn't quite sure. Were you saying that that's something that could not be exempted or could be done in abbreviation form?
It's going to depend on the situation. It really is a case-by-case scenario. As far as schools are concerned, states already have the ability to waive the budget requirement for schools that are participating in NFLP. But for the other organizations, it's really going to depend on the situation. If it's an organization that's, has a long history, we're just talking. I'm coming up with scenarios that I can possibly think of right now, and I know there are dozens others that I can't even imagine. But if we're talking about an organization that has a long history with the summer food service program, they have an agreement in place, it could very much well be an abbreviated, this school has 600 students, we're going to, maybe serve, 700, 800, 900, whatever, meals a day. However they come up with that plan. And so this is how much we think we're going to earn. This is how much we're going to spend on the operational side of it, the administrative side of it, and just, show that they have a plan, that they understand how the program works, and that they have the resources to make it work.
But in terms of a school, it would be, that would fall into an allowable waiver request.
The states already have the ability to waive the budget requirement for school.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have another question that has come in through the website. It's asking if families with all young children who are not in the school, can they be served? And the intent of this is to serve the children who are enrolled in the school. So we really do have to demonstrate that whoever's picking up the meals is, in a household with a child enrolled in the school. So, in the example I gave earlier, if my Jacob is enrolled in the school, I can serve his younger siblings and older siblings because Jacob, the enrolled child, is the ticket, if you will, into that program. We cannot serve children that are not by that relationship related to the school.
Operator, is there another question in the queue on the phone?
One moment for the next question.
Thank you.
The next question comes from Leonard.
Hello.
Hello. Under Section 319, which is the Public Health Service Act, did I hear you correct that the Department of Health has already declared an emergency, health emergency?
The declaration has already been. I meant to look up the date, but I...
Okay. So who at the state level does the activation for such emergency to use the waivers and the MOUs and so forth?
The idea is that you will have the plans in place, and when the school dismisses, they can activate the waiver.
Oh, okay.
Because the declaration has already been made.
Okay.
That's why the plans are important. So if they have a plan in place, you can activate it when they move to dismiss.
So if the districts have submitted those documents, then we can go ahead and do the activation for those?
If they've submitted the documents and you've approved the plan, when and if the school closes, they can start. It can be active.
Thank you.
Oh, and I'm reminded, when they do activate the waiver, please let your region know so that we know that these have been activated as they go on.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and take the next question in the queue, please.
I have no other questions at this time.
Okay, well, if there's no more questions, we're going to go ahead and conclude today's webinar.
One other question just came in. Would you still like to take it?
Wonderful. Yes, please.
Okay, one moment. The next question comes from Becky.
Hi, Becky.
Hi. A question. If, as you were saying, a parent goes to a pickup site for meals and picks up meals for a child that is enrolled in the school and then, say, 2 younger siblings, would you comment on the types of information that you might have to get from the parent regarding the 2 younger children? You know the child's enrolled because you have a roster of the school, but could you give examples of what other information would have to be collected to verify these other kids?
I don't think we intend to collect any additional information. It really is, the enrollment is the key of the child, and you can serve the siblings in the household or the other household members under the age of 18.
Now, I read in some guidance somewhere about also people 19 and over that are either disabled or mentally ill. Could you comment on that?
That's part of the program, so that would work as well. And again, that, we need to address that in the plan, and that's again why the school has to be in close communication with the state agency, because we anticipate the school would know or have a sense if that were the case in that household.
So it still has to be connected with a child that attends that school?
Yes, absolutely. All meal service has to be connected to an enrolled child in the dismissed school.
Thanks.
We have another question that came in by mail that asks, do existing sponsors have to submit a meal plan for approval? Yes, they do have to submit a plan. It needs to be approved in advance, and then they may activate the waiver when the school is dismissed.
We have about 10 more minutes before we conclude the webinar, so if you do have a question, we encourage you to submit your question. You press star 1 to submit a question, and we'll be happy to take questions regarding the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program as well.
The next question I have is from Rita.
Hi, Rita.
Hi. I have a question in reference to the H1N1.
Okay.
If a school food authority has not participated in the summer food service program or the seamless summer option, as long as they complete the addendum, then they can provide the meals under the H1N1 school closure.
You can add an addendum to their agreement, yes, and they need a plan.
Right. That would be in the waiver.
Right. They do not have to have a previous history of operating the program.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Operator, please, is there another question?
I have no other questions at this time.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and read a question from the Q&A that came in. Regarding the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program, can you tell me when the timeline is for when the final toolkit will be available online? That's an excellent question. So we have Phase 1, which begins now, and it goes through December. And hopefully in December, we will have a little preview of some of the materials that we'll have developed. And then starting in January, we're pretty much going to be in an ongoing mode, submitting new materials to that toolkit on an ongoing basis. I hope that answers your question. I think it came in from Linda Handel.
Another comment.
Okay. And then there's an additional comment to Linda's question. I'll go ahead and read it. Also regarding what materials to include, it would be helpful in the toolkit if there's some explanation and clarification on how purchasing needs can be done, including the open and free competition procurement rules and how purchasing is done with local produce, geographical preferences as well. Another excellent suggestion. Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and see if there's any more questions over the phone, please.
The next question is from Joe Fisher.
Hi, Joe.
Hi. This goes all the way back to the very beginning of the webinar where someone was inquiring about a situation where a school which was whose grant level was at $50 a student was still unable to expend that money in the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program. And the question was, could it be reallocated? What I'm concerned about here is if a reallocation was made before that school had actually completed its fresh fruit and vegetable program operations for the year, would the reduction in the grant take them below $50?
Right. I guess the answer that I would give, I guess, is, if you're taking it away late enough in the year and leaving the school all that they would be able to expend, that's just, I understand that would be a possibility at that point, and maybe some additional work would be done with that school in the future to try to get that money expended in a proper manner. But if you're taking it away for the last month of school and you're not leaving them penniless, you're leaving them with all the money that they would be able to spend otherwise. It's just a way for the state to allocate that funds and get it spent by someone that is able to spend that money.
Right. Perhaps someone who just needed a little more to finish out the year with if they had a very successful program operating. I'd like to segue and offer a suggestion for the toolkit, and that is I'm suspecting that identifying and documenting and reporting administrative costs could be something of a puzzle in the context of fresh fruit and vegetable. So I would suggest that there be some element in the toolkit that would address those issues.
Right, and we'll see how much we end up putting that in the toolkit. It's not going to be in phase one, but that's really going to be addressed in a more detailed manner in the reg. And that way it's going to get more comments and clearance that way to get everybody's buy-in.
Operator, is there another question?
The next question comes from Judy Straisner.
Yes, good afternoon. I was wondering if there are any states currently that do have a template plan that they can share with other states.
It's simple.
Because basically we just keep hearing of everybody developing a plan, and I don't know if anybody has one, but we keep going back to if schools are closed, if the health department has determined that the school has to be closed, then who is going to prepare the food for the children for distribution, and where is it going to be prepared? If you're a family member and you're coming up to pick food for children in your household that are ill, you're going to be kind of spreading this viral infection around yourself. So I just was wondering if anybody does have a plan they would be willing to share, because Louisiana would love it.
We have a prototype request or plan on our website, and I think the issues that you raise are very important issues to be considered during the plan. One of the reasons why we've been using the word dismissed rather than closed is there's a technical component of that says the school building may still be open, so food preparation could still be happening in the building even though students are not in attendance. So that's one way that communities might still be able to prepare foods even though the students are not in school. But again, those are the very reasons why we wanted people to plan this out in advance of needing to implement it.
Okay, I'll check for that template plan. I was just thinking there was a template for the agreement and for the waivers.
Which is the plan. The waiver request is what we understood as the plan.
Okay. Well, if any states would have theirs outlined, just to see something as an example, that would be great. So thank you.
If you do, please send it to your region, and we'll work on disseminating that.
The next question comes from Amanda Anderson.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi. I just want a little clarification on the agreement requirements.
Okay.
Okay, if a school's participating in the National School Lunch Program, and then they want to come up with a plan, but they weren't originally with the Summer Food Service Program, do they have to actually apply for the Summer Food Service Program?
It's going to depend on your state. If you are the same state agency that operates NSLP and the Summer Food Service Program, you can add that to their existing agreement.
Okay, so if they are part of the NSLP, then we don't have to have them fill out the normal forms we would to have them participate in the Summer Food Program.
I think the answer is no. Again, that's going to depend on your state agency's requirements, but we would hope you would make it as streamlined as possible.
Okay, thank you.
We have about a minute left.
The next question comes from Patty Hardick.
Hi, Patty.
Hi there. I have a comment for the toolkit.
Sure, great.
We've had a school or a couple of them request some kind of public announcement that they can share with the newspaper or over the radio, just sharing, with the community that they were awarded or received the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program.
Oh, that's a wonderful idea. Great, thank you. Okay, we're just about at the end of our webinar session. If you are currently in the queue on the phone, you can go ahead and submit your question using the Q&A. We want to make sure we receive your question, but we're going to go ahead and conclude today's webinar. I want to thank all the presenters and everyone that took the time to attend the session. Also, just as a reminder, we are going to make this webinar available as a recording, so as soon as that comes out, we'll let everybody know how to access it. And in regards to the additional questions and comments that came in, we'll find a good way to provide or come up with a plan to respond to everything that came in. So thank you again for joining us today, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you.